Hi, welcome to our Bettery Hub channel. And as I always say, Thursdays are one of my most awaited days of the week, where we have our Bettery Hub channel. And today we have our Bettery Connections, where we have a special guest joining us. Now, before we move on, I would like to thank all those of you who have been giving us consistent feedback in terms of how we can improve and how we can do things better. So thank you so much. And recently we even had a survey out to ask all of you who are the kind of speakers we can actually bring on, the kind of topics. And thank you so much for all the feedback that you have been consistently giving us. And now, before we move on, do remember, any point of time you have any questions, feel free to engage our guest. And if you are somebody who believes or who loves to actually see videos rather than just audio, then do remember to join us on our YouTube channel and Facebook page, Bettery Lab YouTube channel and Facebook page, to see our live streamings and even those previous live chats that we had. And if you're an audio person and you love to, have podcasts, then just join us on our Spotify Bettery Hub podcast, where all our live chats are up there. All right. So without any further ado, let me first of all introduce you to our today's guest. Now, a special guest, and I was looking forward for today's live chat for the whole week, in fact. Now, I have Priveen, one of the two-man team that has set up AirAsia here in Singapore in 2003. He later joined the regional commercial team to drive branding or building brand equity was his key role. He spearheaded several initiatives with global brands such as Manchester United Football Club, Williams F1 and Lotus F1 Racing teams. Post AirAsia, he has worked with projects for some of the biggest MNCs on the region, such as DHL, Ernst & Young, and several mainstream lifestyle and consumer brands. Now, in his role as a CEO and founder of Reapra Aviation Partners, he worked with the head of countries in the region to increase their country's aviation economy. Now, Priveen has spent almost 17 years, I say again, 17 years taking up senior roles across Asia and prides himself in being able to understand cultural nuances and experiences of building brands in the region. Now, on a personal capacity, now this is where, I had a good chat with Priveen over a coffee. Priveen has spent almost 2 decades bringing up education to the rural of the region, and his belief in empowerment also sees him working closely with single mothers in Singapore. And he actually also works and coaches and mentors a lot of entrepreneurs and startups. Now, his key philosophy is about empowerment and life too short for frowns. So without any delays, let me bring upon Priveen. Hey, Priveen.
Hi, Shakti. How are you?
All good, all good. It took me some time. You can see me perspiring while I was doing the introduction. It's like I can go on and on. I had to really summarize your introduction.
I love the introduction. I love the introduction, but you really didn't have to emphasize 17 years.
But anything above 10 years, I believe is a long term, right? I mean, you have spent much of time,
I'm in denial. I'm middle age, but I'm in denial,
I think it happens. We are more or less about there, so it always happens.
Anyway, thank you very much for having me this evening. We spoke about this for the past month, so I'm glad that we finally putting aside some time to have this chat. So thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure to have you on board and to have this. In fact, I've been looking forward for our live chat for quite some time, and I was excited when we scheduled the date, and here we are.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So, Priveen, let's talk about yourself. A brief introduction of yourself, your business, and the journey behind your current success. Now, for our viewers, just to keep you informed, what I just told you is just the tip of the iceberg. So I'll let the man to talk more about himself.
Sure. I'll probably take about 4 to 5 minutes to do a quick intro. I usually do my talks. It's unscripted. I usually start with questions and answers usually, because then I understand the feel of the attendees usually. So this is a bit different. So I'm very proud to say I'm one of the N-level students who made it. So I'm your poster boy for N-levels students. So I did my diploma. After that, I didn't do my degree because of family circumstances. So I went out to work. So I was very lucky to join the team that set up AirAsia in Singapore. Before that, I did a short stint with Singapore Tourism Board before I came on board AirAsia. So I've always known from day one, I enjoy people, I enjoy marketing, I enjoy product to marketplace journey. So even with Singapore Tourism Board, I was doing marketing. And then with AirAsia, the first year and a half or close to, I did operations, rolling out. Basically, we did everything except fly the aircraft, change the engines. Besides that, like every startup, you will know that as an entrepreneur or as a business owner or as a startup team, you do everything. I still remember we'd carry our operations phone. Even when we go to sleep at night, the operations phone is next to us. Anticipating a phone from the airport, and then you just run back and do what you got to do. Back then, no one knew what AirAsia was, who AirAsia was. But today, we AirAsia has redefined social norms, right? I still remember one of the questions asked was, "Hey, really a $40 Singapore to Bangkok?" Those kind of things. So, and you remember back in the day, you would pay like $400 to go from Singapore to Bangkok. So when we came around, people just couldn't fathom that reality. So yeah, I spent some time doing operations, and then I knew that my passion was in commercial. That means non-operation, so the business side of aviation or airlines. So I got into the commercial team. We did a lot of really cool stuff. We did a lot of first in the market stuff. We've worked with Manchester United Football Club. We've worked with non-traditional stuff, right? So like a simple thing like in 2000 or in the early days of aviation, an advertisement would be cabin crew pulling the blanket over the guests while they're sleeping, that kind of thing. But here we came up with an MTV style rock anthem, and we decided to be different. Like, Tony empowered us to push the boundaries, to push to blur the lines. Of course, within control, it's all risk, right? But it's controlled risk. Yeah. So that I really enjoyed my days in AirAsia. Having nothing, I still remember the early days. We were so broke, also. Before AirAsia got the fame that it got. So from that to rebuilding myself as an aviation guy, I never thought I'd like to be in aviation. I knew nothing about aviation. I share a joke. So I remember the first few days I was in the airport, and then I say, "Wow, so many pilots in the airport," because everyone's walking around with their white and blue, with the stripes here. So I thought they were all pilots. Like that. I found out they're actually checking stuff. They have almost the same uniform as the pilots, right? So I'm like, "Wow, damn cool! So many female and so young pilots and all that." So that's how much I didn't know about the industry, but that also taught me from a very young age that nothing is impossible. You put your heart and soul to it. Three-quarters of the people who started AirAsia didn't know anything about aviation. Tony given, the deputy group CEO, Bo Lingham also given. They're all from music, and they've gone on to start amazing brands, right? So post AirAsia, after AirAsia, I actually spent a year traveling, and I went to India. I was a monk for 3 months. In a Tibetan monastery, and I backpacked across India because I had spent so many years working. I just needed a break, lah. So after a year of traveling, almost a year, I came back to Singapore. I was lecturing for a bit with Temasek Poly in aviation as well, but concentrating on commercial, the business side of aviation, marketing, branding, and then thereafter I started a couple of companies. My most recent company, which you mentioned, was Reapra Aviation Partners. We started that to address. So I understand second tier market. So low cost carriers are second tier airlines, right? So you have your legacy airlines like Singapore Airlines, Thai Airways, and your Emirates, and then you have the low cost carrier. So I'm very familiar with the space. So I knew that it's not about it's not about airlines, but it's about distribution channeling. So the more airports I can turn around in the country, the more flights I can get in, the higher I can increase touristic value, right, and touristic revenue. So we started the company in 2017. I wanted it to be a chill out, do 2, 3 airports a year, enjoy life, that kind of agency. But we really picked up traction very quickly. And the region really needed an entity like us who understood aviation at our level. So Within 3 months, I was sitting like with the prime ministers or the head of states, talking about aviation economy. So we started talking about the airlines, the state airlines. We started talking about their airports. So, for example, in Myanmar, there are 60 airports in Myanmar. I'm sure you didn't know that. Out
60
of
airports.
which, out of which 30 are operational. So can you imagine if we turned around 30 or even 10 airports in Myanmar, the kind of tourism that would pull in? I work with Nepal. I have a very good relationship with the people of Nepal as well. And so it became something very exciting. And I've always lived on one mantra, which is empowerment. So even with Reapra Aviation Partners, we were empowering countries to bring in more tourists into their country. We wanted to empower travelers and tourists with more options. Instead of just flying to Suvarnabhumi in Bangkok, you can fly up to Udon Thani, and we turn around the airport. So it was really really exciting. We sold the company in 2019. And then, so during this time also, I was advising a few other MNCs. I work very closely with the DHL innovation team where they look into anything to do with aviation or branding. I would be involved in it. Ernst and Young, a couple of projects there. So it's been very exciting. So over time, I knew what I really enjoyed. I enjoyed anything to do with consumer buying behavior, what you generally or loosely, or what we you loosely call branding. So people have a very big misconception of branding. People think that it is like, behind on your wall, you have all those graphs and signs behind.
Yeah.
People think that is branding. People think marketing is branding, but it's nothing to do with it. Marketing is an activity. Branding is the reason why you do things. So it's almost spiritual. It almost justifies your existence, right? So I shared this example with you before. Like, so I say, you're coming to meet me. It's a hot day. I say, once I meet you, I'll pass you a cold can of Coke. And in that split second, the color, the taste, the experience, the burp after you drink that first gulp of Coke, all that is branding. So you're talking about consumer touch points, you're talking about consumer perception, you're talking about brand journey. So there are many facades of this. So you can't just say that, oh, I'm doing only this aspect. That's not branding. Branding is the blood of it, right? So we need to understand that. So I started getting very involved in consumer buying behavior. I'm a huge fan of it. I like to know why. If I need Shakti for coffee, I would suggest meeting in Marriott versus Kopitiam. Both serve coffee. Kopitiam is cheaper. Both are air conditioned, but it's about brand perception, right? So it's about purchasing an hour of a perceived lifestyle that I want to sell to you, for example. So when I give you the call and I say, hey, Shakti, meet me in Marriott Cafe, you straight away have a certain brand perception of me, versus I say, hey, meet me in Yishun Kopitiam. Then you'll be like, hey, this matcha is them low class, that kind of thing. So, but at the end of the day, it's still coffee, right? It's still coffee and we're still having conversations. So why people buy what they buy, why they choose to spend their $10 here over something else. So I'm really huge on consumer buying behavior, and that's what really drives me. I currently am advising a few. So last year I spent a year with PropNex Real Estate. It's a public listed company as the chief commercial officer, and I helped turn around a few things and brought in innovation as well. An amazing journey that I spent a year, and then I didn't want to be known as a property guy, so I bowed out after a year. And now I'm working with a few companies as an advisor capacity from a strategy perspective. So these are both aviation and non-aviation companies as well. Yeah. So in a nutshell, that's my journey, and that's what I'm been doing and what I'm doing.
Praveen, I mean, this is something that just came about while you were sharing. Did you see yourself, going into the aviation industry anytime in your younger days, or you're something that just happened?
Yeah, like I said, I never knew anything about aviation. My brother's a cabin crew with Singapore Airlines. He has been for the past 30 years, but that's as aviation as I got exposed. I've always wanted to be in hospitality. I knew that. So I figured I'd probably end up in a hotel or convention center or something like, something in the hospitality space, not specifically aviation. Because like everyone, right, we have this misconception to get into aviation, you need to be an engineering student or come from an
Yeah.
engineering background. But it has
Yes.
nothing to do with that. So unless you want to be an engineer, lah, or become
Yeah.
a pilot. But besides that, if it's not a licensed role, then you don't have to have those qualifications. I eventually did my degree is in marketing actually, specializing in consumer behavior as well. Yeah. So yeah, to answer your question, no, I didn't plan to get into aviation.
And yeah, that's interesting, right? I mean, like what you said, normally, the first thing that comes into a person's mind when you talk about aviation is about engineering. This person will be in engineering. And for yourself, went into aviation. Right now, you're talking about branding, about, so I think it's completely, I won't say it's different, but it's like much different from what one would have expected when you are in the aviation industry. That's really interesting, actually.
Yeah,
But
because I come from a commercial background, right? So at the end
yeah,
of the day, selling a cup of coffee, selling a pair of branded jeans, and selling a seat on an aircraft, it's all about consumer buying behavior, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
So I think,
fundamentally, the nuances are the same. That is why I'm able to go cross industry and not only be in. I mean, aviation is my blood. Like, I even have a tattoo of an aircraft. Right. I love it. It's a tattoo of a 737, my favorite aircraft. And I love it. I mean, nothing is sweeter than the sound of the engines powering up when you board an aircraft. I'm in Singapore pre-COVID. I'm in Singapore only 10 days a month. Every day I'm in an aircraft, traveling somewhere. And I love it, right? It's an addiction. So, I mean, that's my passion. But when you talk about cross, cross, cross industry, people ask me, hey, you've always been in branding and aviation. How come you joined property? How can you join property? But at a strategic level, at a senior level, strategy is strategy. A dollar is a dollar. Nuances are the same. Of course, right down at operational level, that may change. There could be variations. But for at a strategic level, you have cost centers, you have revenue centers, you have P&L, you have balance scorecarding, you have financial balance sheet. Yeah, so the language is the same.
right. And before we started, right, or at the initial start, Praveen, you did say that you are the pride of all the N levels. So I think that is something that I don't know how many of our viewers caught that, but I did. Definitely, I did. So,
Yeah.
what inspired to be what you are today? From that time, prior to aviation, prior to knowing what you're going to hit into, what actually inspired you?
I came from a very tough journey, right? So my father left the family when I was between 14 to 18 was a very tough period of my life. And having to work while I was doing my diploma, not having food, feeling hunger. I don't know whether I shared this with you during our coffee session, but one of my greatest teacher was when I was doing my diploma, I was part-timing with the Hyatt as a banquet waiter. So because I'm tall, right? So they'll make me carry the big round tray. Banquets, right? The Chinese banquets, they're like 100 people, and then after they
Yeah.
eat, one fella, one clown will carry those like plates on this big round thing. That was me. So
Okay.
it was tough, and I'd go in after school sometimes, and I lived in Yishun with mom, and I'd have limited. So it's either I have dinner or I pay for my transport on the last MRT coming home. That kind of thing. Sometimes I have to take cab. You need money, right? Most of the times I ended up walking from Orchard to Yishun. Because I just didn't have enough cash. One of my greatest teaching moments. I'm very proud of it. In fact, I give a lot of talks. Right, I've given at least 1,000 talks. And one of the things I always, when people ask me what's my motivation or what's been that point where it really was the teaching point for you, when I didn't have money to have dinner, and I had a mineral water bottle. So I went to the toilet, I filled it up with water, and then, I just sat down and I filled up my stomach. And thereafter, many days I did that repeated. It became a very common dinner option. So I'll dream of spaghetti and just have a sip of water, and then that took me up and down because I wanted to save the money to transport home. But that became that was the first guru for me. My first guru was that. And I'm very proud of that. A lot of people are very shy to share about their lowest points. They just want to share about their highest points. But I think I don't like sharing about my highest points. I just want to share about my lowest points because that's where we really learn and we really chisel out to be an individual. My second guru is this who's the current deputy CEO of AirAsia. It's after Tony is this guy. His name is Bolingam. When I was 23 years old, 24 years old, earning a lot of money, from for a boy who never had a lot of things, so suddenly you can afford Louis Vuitton and all that, Cartier and all that. So, for 6 months I was spending money like water. Then he was listening, watching, noticing. And he sent me on one day and literally gave me a virtual slap and said, how long are you going to do this, So from him, I learned humility and knowing that is just material stuff. When you are earning $500, you will say that, what, if I had $1,000 enough. When you're earning $5,000, you will say, if I earn $7,000 enough. When you earn 10,000, 20,000 will be enough. When you earn 100, a million will be enough. And when you earn a million, you want 10 million. So needs and wants are very, very different. That has been some of my greatest teaching learning points, on my journey. I'm very, very proud. I'm interviewed. I'm in the media a lot, especially this past 1 year. Through COVID, a lot of questions on transport, vertical, on aviation. So if you Google me, there's a lot of quotes in aviation per se. A couple of years ago, Straight Times did a video on me and a huge spread about my journey as well. And I'm always very proud to say that I'm this N-level guy who lives in Yishun, who drinks kopi C in the coffee shop, because it keeps me real. You need to understand that when you talk about branding, when you talk about consumer empowerment, when you talk about consumer buying behavior, if I'm in a swanky car going from point A to point B and meeting top people, I'm not interacting with the consumers. When I take the MRT and I sit down and I understand what people are doing, for example, MRTs no longer put advertisements on top, they put it on the floor. Why? Because people are looking at their phones and looking down, so it makes more sense. So these are little things that you pick up, right? You understand the buzz. What's the latest fashion trends are. Fashion trend tells you psychology as well. I mean, it reflects the psyche of the society also. So it's very, very important to sit down in the coffee shop, just look around and observe, because then you will know how to sell what you need to sell, So I think I constantly am very proud that I'm an N-level student, did my diploma, and it's interesting that now I go back to Shatec, because I graduated from Shatec, I did tourism and hospitality, and now I go back, I've been talks there, I've been part of their board, or their discussion panels with ministers. So it's come back a full circle. When I do, so on the social work aspect, when I speak to people or youth at risk, or single mothers, I really understand the journey that they're on, and it really empowers me as much as it empowers them as well.
Right. And, Praveen, with the journey that you had, I mean, from the time where you were young, a lot of lessons that you have learned, I would say going through the hardship and the difficult moments, right? And that spurred you to be what you are today. And then from aviation and then subsequently as an entrepreneur. So maybe, let's talk about current entrepreneurs out there, right? What do you think from your experience is the right mindset required for entrepreneurs?
Okay, so I'll share my experience, right?
Yes.
So Reapra Aviation Partner was a subsidiary of a venture capital company called Reapra Private Limited. So the Japanese company that had invested in several companies in Singapore. I was just sharing with you before we went live. There's a huge difference between Eastern and Western entrepreneurs. In the West, at the age of 18, you leave home. You have nothing, whatever your parents give you, pocket money, whatever, you have your 4% on your own 2 feet. If you make it, you make it. If you don't, you end up on the streets. So you have everything to lose. They understand the concept of losing everything. But in Asia, we come from a culture that's very family-centric. So this fella will try to be an entrepreneur, cannot make it, they might laugh. But other options can go and join Papa's company or my father introduced me to someone. So there's always a safety net. So when you have that, you're not driven lah, like I shared with you earlier, in sales jobs or commission based jobs, a lot of times in the West, people ask their potential staff, do you have a family, do you have kids? The moment they say yes, they hire them because they now have a reason to fight hard to earn that commission, right? Versus a guy who's just like having a nice time and doing it part time or whatever. So motivation is very, very critical. So entrepreneurs in Singapore, they think they've got it right, but I think we're still far away because traditionally our culture and our DNA has not been very risk centric. It actually has been, on the contrary, it's been very risk adverse. A lot of the entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs wannabe that I've met always have this fantastic idea in mind, but they're not willing to put in the hours for it. A lot of my hair and my eye bags all came from sleepless nights. The 17 years that you mentioned, I think I probably slept only 7 years of those 17 years. The rest of the time, you're hustling and you're trying to make things happen, and it's not easy. Like today, when I meet people tell me that, hey, oh, Priveen, you got it all made, but yala, you've done it all. I mean, for you, easy life. I say, yeah, because I've worked my butt off for the past 17 years. And I'm only enjoying the benefits, or I'm reaping the benefits of it maybe in the past 3-4 years or 5 years. But before that, it's been straight up hustle. So you must have the guts to hustle. You must have the humility to learn. A very good example, right? You can be a fantastic chef, but that doesn't mean you can run a restaurant, because there's other aspects of business operations that you need to understand and learn. And this is where humility comes in. You need to find partners that will come in and complement you. It cannot be an ego-driven ambition, right? So during one of my talks once, someone asked me, what is the most important thing when I'm starting a business? So I usually have two questions for this. Number one, are you doing it for the money? If they say yes, then I've got no answer for them, because then they can do any business just to earn money, right? Or they can take on 4 jobs and make the money. But if you look at big brands like Tesla, Google, Apple, AirAsia, Grab, all these founders were very passionate about something, right? So when you're passionate about something and there's a gap in that space, you want to fill it up, right? Because they're passionate about it. Once they fill up the gap, the money follows after. So it wasn't the money before the business model or the business plan. It was the business plan first, and then the money followed. So passion is underrated. Today, a lot of people tell me that, oh, I'm a branding guy. I understand marketing. I've been in branding all my life. I'm like, no, you're not. You only can call yourself a branding person if you have been part of a brand that has redefined social norms. Then you understand the importance of product development, for example. It is not something where you spend 3 years in a school and learn syllabus and pick up something like that. So coming back to entrepreneurs, it is extremely important, right, to understand what you want to do, why you're doing what you're doing, and what your intent is at the end of the day. If you understand your intent, then you go down to understand what your strengths are, right? So once you understand your strengths are, then you also understand what your weaknesses are, and that's where you start building a team, and that's when you start bringing people to complement you. So while you may be the founder, you may not be the key person driving the business. A lot of founders think that just because they're founders, they are CEOs. That's furthest from the truth. You can run it for a while, but then sometimes you may need a CEO. For example, an example in point was the chef. The guy who cooks well doesn't mean he can run a restaurant. You maybe need a professional guy who can run front house to do that. And when you want to expand, you need someone who understands strategy. So that doesn't mean that the chef has to be the CEO. Not everyone who starts companies need to be CEOs. And this is the biggest problem I find with entrepreneurs. The humility to admit that, hey, you know what, I'm not CEO material. I have this idea. I need to build a team around that idea.
Right. And how do you think passion plays a big part for these entrepreneurs?
Very important. Because the reality is, first 6 months you have no money.
Okay. Right.
I mean, seriously speaking, when you want to start something, don't think about your Mercedes car or your Audis or your Louis Vuittons and your Richard Mille watches, right? That's not going to come for the longest time. You need to put every cent into building the business. I'll give you a very strong case in point. Tony Fernandez, right? When everyone says, "Wow, Asia, you bought the airline for $1, $1." But no one remembers that the airline, yes, it cost $1, but it was 100 million USD in debt. And Tony mortgaged his own house twice to finance. It's not easy, bro. Financing your house to start an airline. You try going home and telling that to your wife. You know what I mean? After that, they'll kick us out, right? But that's my point. You need to believe in yourself. And for Tony, it was his longest dream to start a low-cost brand to connect more people. So passion is fundamental. Unless you're telling me I'm here to make a quick buck and sell the company off, maybe you don't need passion. You just need, if you've got money, a good team, and the right business plan, you can probably, fluff it. But passion is priceless.
Right. And before we head into the topic of branding, we have a question from Vishalini. Right. So her question is, do you think education is important? I think that's a question that quite common, right? I hear, a lot of people taking in account that, they look at Steve Jobs. They say, he was a college dropout. So why should we when I want to become an entrepreneur? So what's your take in this?
Okay, so hi Vishalini, that's a very good question actually. There are two pillars I believe. Number one, end of education is character, right? So character is more important, right? At the end of the day, you only have integrity. Number two, there's a difference between academics and education. Academics is what you sit down, textbook tells you to learn, you learn, right? There's a period of time, many 50 years ago, education and academics told us that the earth was flat. But then we went on to learn that it's not, right? So academics is important given Singapore's context. Academics may not be relevant, right? Like how many of us use square root mathematics? I mean, I'm dyslexic. I forgot to mention that I'm dyslexic. So math never made it for me, right? But I think the deeper question is education relevant? So when you talk about academics, it is not as important, I feel, because at the end of the day, academics teaches you or provides you with tools so that when you go out to the job market, you may be able to apply some of these concepts. But we need to bear in mind, academics are always at least 2 to 3 years outdated. Right? When they build the syllabus and it goes out and eventually taught, it's relevant, but it may not be current. But what is more important for entrepreneurs or anyone at all is, like I said, education is lifelong. I'm still learning. For me, that is education. And as an entrepreneur, you must always have the humility to continue to learn. So education continues to be there. I'm currently an advisor to an AI company as well. And I know I don't know a lot about IoT, but I'm learning as well. I'm sitting with people and I'm learning. I'm sitting down with the engineers and learning. So that is continued education. And that's something that's been ingrained into me from a very young age. But Vishalini, thank you. That's actually a very good question.
Right. And Vishal, if you think that this answers your question, just give us a thumbs up so we know. And with that, we will move on, Prabin. Now, this is an interesting topic. We already started talking about this, right? Let's talk about branding, right? So, how does one create their brand effectively? Because I think previously we were just talking about branding. It's not about just having a logo. It's an experience, So, how does one create their branding effectively, Prabin?
Someone cannot create branding.
Okay.
You must believe in your branding. Branding is the reason for your existence. Why you do what you do. Your marketing activities are a subset of branding. So, for example, the an individual's journey with branding starts with himself first. For example, yourself. Shakti, you started this platform where you invite people to come and speak. What is your intent? Why are you doing what you're doing? At the end of the day, what do you hope to achieve from this? Right? So you could say, I just want to connect people. I want to build user acquisition. I want to build data, and or I eventually want to become an MC. Whatever reason, right? You could have 100 reasons. All that will eventually form your brand. Why you do what you do, right? Um, and that is something that is very, very critical. And this is why you see Westerners, a lot of them wear their brand on their sleeve, right? Like they are who they are because they are representing their brand. When they say that, they're actually representing what they believe in. You know what I mean? So when we talk about branding, for those who own companies, for those who are planning to own companies, your branding story, your branding guidelines, all those formal parameters that you would traditionally come up, has to always start with why you do what you do. You know, if you can't answer that, you can't build a brand, right? So when I started, I started one of my companies was called Rockstar Solutions. So solutions with a U, so it's solutions, right? And my intent was that everyone is a rock star. You know, everyone wants the attention when you're a rock star, when you're when you're Dr. Dre on stage or Michael Jackson or Axl Rose from Guns N' Roses. The rock star always gets the attention of the 100,000 people in the stadium. You know, how do we make everyone in your company feel like a rock star? So we provided solutions for that, you know. So that's how the brand evolved, you know. That's how Rockstar Solutions evolved. Um, and that tag has stuck with me. So now even like whenever journalists or my friends write articles on me, there's always a hashtag Aviation Rockstar, and that came from a brand perception they had picked up when I was in Rockstar Solutions. You know, so that is branding. Like I said earlier on, right? That the Coca-Cola example. When you think about Coca-Cola, what do you think of? You know, you think of the red can. You think of how it tastes. There's a slight metallic taste. The burp on a hot day, how it feels, right? And that is why branding is so important. I mean, why does Nike and Coke and all these big brands still spend like 400 million a year on branding and advertising? Because out of sight, out of mind, the moment I stop reminding you who I am and what I represent, you forget me. You know, McDonald's, everyone knows McDonald's, but they still spend a ridiculous amount of money on advertising and branding as well. You know, but they still don't deviate from what they represent and what they stand for.
And in this case, what is the key difference between personal? Is there a key difference between personal and company branding?
No. When you say personal, you mean a person who is part of a company or a person who has started a company?
Okay, let's talk about a person who started a company. So in this case, what we're talking about is that the person represents the company, which means he himself is actually part of the branding of the company. Is that what? Okay.
Yeah.
And we have
so you become a brand ambassador of your own brand.
Right. And what about the staff, the employee of a company? That means it's not the starter. You know, so for them,
that's actually a very good question, you know, Shakti. Very, very good question, and I'll tell you why. 20 years ago, human resources were called human resources, right? Today, a lot of these departments are called people development. They're called culture. They're called talent acquisition. A lot of emotional verbs, I would say, to describe this department. Why? Because they've realized that instead of just hiring a person, they need to hire someone who can echo their brand, who believes in their brand, and who advocates it. So it starts right from there, branding actually. So when traditional branding, everyone thinks marketing and all, even when you hire someone, that is also part of your brand acquisition because this person becomes your brand ambassador. So from a company perspective, all these HRs have evolved. They've become talent acquisition, they've become people department, and they've become the culture department as well. Why is it so important? Because they have understood, companies understood that the DNA of their company must echo within their employees. If not, staff not motivated, KPIs not met, and companies don't meet their P&L, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And now we have a question here, Praveen, from Iskandar. Now his question is, what would be the roadmap for startups and SMEs to have the same brand strength as those established and larger companies?
Hi, Iskandar. So I'm assuming you're asking me how can an SME have the same brand strength as a big MNC, right?
Yes, I
If
think
I'm reading it right. Can you give us a thumbs up if I've understood your question well, Iskandar, so that I don't answer it wrongly? Okay, I'm going to go ahead then.
Iskandar, if you are listening, if it's the understanding of the question right, just give us a thumbs up.
Because I don't want to misanswer your question. Okay, anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and answer so that we don't wait.
Yeah, we have a thumbs up.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right.
Thanks, Iskandar. So Shakti, you've called me to share my most frankest opinions, and that's what I will share, unfiltered. Yes. Yeah. Iskandar, so if you have a company, your company, you got 5 fellas, and you're saying, yeah, I want to become as big as Nike, how? In today's context, it's going to cost you a lot of money because of the landscape and environment we are in. That's the reality, right? When we talk about branding, branding is not an overnight thing, Iskandar. It is something that grows. You look at Netflix. Netflix is a 20-year-old brand, but people only started really using Netflix over the past 3 to 5 years. Before that, no one knew Netflix, right? So there are a lot of brands like that. So when coming back to your question, straight up, if you have money and you are able to invest into advertising and promotion, that will be the fastest way. I mean, that's a marketing strategy that I'm sharing with you. But when you talk about brand strength, I think that's what you're referring to. You're not talking about. I don't know. So I don't know whether you're talking about brand loyalty or popularity of the brand. Like popularity of the brand is sales, So my answer is purely sales. You want to become popular to sell more products, you need to invest in marketing campaigns. And in today's world, it's tweeting, it's Instagram, it's TikTok, and all the social media stuff. When you're talking about long-term brand, about brand loyalty, that takes a long time, Iskandar. And I'll give you an example. Say, for example, Shakti and me run coffee shop, okay? And you, Iskandar, go to Shakti and buy a Kopio Kosong, for example, right? For $1. And Shakti gives you a very decent cup of coffee, right? You're happy, your needs are met, and you walk away. And then you come to Preveen's shop. And Preveen knows Iskandar. Preveen puts in the effort to get to know Iskandar and say, hey, you're married, your kids, I know the name of your kids, I know your kids going to PSLE. I will get very personal and emotional with you. And I increase over time, a year later, I increase my coffee to $1.20 or $1.30. But Shakti is still selling at $1. You will still come and buy from me because you have emotional investment with my brand. That is a fact. So people don't buy products, they buy experiences. And in today's world, it's a very selfish, empowering world. You make me feel good about myself, I don't mind paying a bit more. But to get there, you need to invest into you need an emotional investment from your consumer and also time to build that brand and relationship as well. So I don't know whether you sell products, whether you sell services, but I'm trying to give you different aspects to your question. So again, to sum it, the quickest way is, of course, to do a campaign where you sell products, right? But my favorite and what I always encourage people is to slowly build your brand because people are not stupid anymore. The world is at their fingertips, and it is a matter of time before they figure it out. What is the metric for small companies to use then? Um, Again, very subjective. Iskander, if you can quickly tell me, are we talking about unit products or just a service? So I'll give you an example. Am I selling bottles of water or am I selling a consultancy? Because your metric will be different for those. So in if I'm selling bottled water, then it's the number of bottles I sell, right? But if I'm selling consultancy, then it's time and effort. How many hours I spend with you and all that, right? Um, And but I'm just again going to go ahead and answer. When you talk about metric for small companies, I'm assuming you're asking what's the metric unit or what's the percentage of your OPEX that you want to invest into marketing or branding. Typically in this region in Asia, if you're talking about products, it's about 25%.
Right.
Experience, emotional.
Sorry.
Cheers, Iskandar. Thank you for your question.
Right.
I like the question actually. Yeah, it's a very good question.
Yeah. In fact, he had another question which I think you have already answered. It was quite some time ago, just before the second was what kind of and what milestones would you suggest to help progress towards global branding, which we actually already touched on. And thanks, Iskandar. Thank you so much. With the questions, and guys, viewers out there, you have any questions, keep the questions rolling in, and and now let's talk about actually more or less, whatever I want to ask about branding, you have already answered it because of Iskandar's questions. I got to give a thumbs up to Iskandar. He made it much easier for me. Right. So now let's talk about the challenges you face as an entrepreneur itself. What kind of challenges did you face being an entrepreneur, and how do you actually overcome them?
Okay. So my personal experience as an entrepreneur is probably going to be different from the typical Singaporean entrepreneurs because I already had about more than 10 years experience, very specific experience. So I was very blessed to have a very easy time with getting investors in, right? But I want to answer this question based on my assumption of the attendees today. The challenges is this: you start something because you believe in it, because you like it. The reality is you need to make money and put food on the table. That is the fact. Branding, we can talk till the cows come home. But if at the end of the day it's not making you money, it's not making money, you're gonna fail. So you need to understand. I'm gonna tweak your question, bro.
Yeah, sure.
Because we've only got like 10 minutes, so I would use this to submit, right? We all know what business plans are, but we don't understand the importance of a business plan. A business plan becomes your personal Bible throughout your lifetime in that company or as a person. You start this manual on the first day you conceive it, and you build it and you build it, you redefined it. So it's a storybook of your company. That's what a business plan must be, because your forecasted revenue, all that is crap. Honestly, no business plan will tell you I'm going like this, right? No business plan will tell you I'm going like every business plan you see. I'm doing this. I'm a unique brand. Everyone wants me. My value proposition is this. It sounds perfect, but the reality is, if the all business plans were biblical truths, then every company would, or every business would be a unicorn business. Why is it 90% of entrepreneurs fail, right? So the point is, we need to understand that we are not perfect, number one. At the point where we conceive the idea to start the business, until we start the actually day one of your capex, things have changed. Technology has changed. It can be 6 months, it can be 3 months, it can be 1 month. But things, the only constant is change, right? So you need to constantly give emphasis and importance to your business plan, your P&L, your balance sheet. You need to be as prudent and as frank as you can in your business plan. If I'm not able to go to an ATM and withdraw, that money is no use to me. So virtual money or virtual revenue is not important at all. It is the actual sale and transaction that I do will eventually make or break my company. So the first thing you got to do is be very serious about yourself. If you are a company or if you are a brand or an entrepreneur that's starting out and you believe in something and you think you've got a good brand or good product, but you don't have that brand equity, you're not popular, right? Try to collaborate with a popular brand, right? So that you can co-brand with them and ride on their user database. You can ride on their brand equity as well. And if you do have a good brand, any big brand would want to work with you, in collaboration. It could be a business development or revenue sharing model, whatever model it is. But there's always an option around. But it boils down to how tight your business plan is going to be, because that's what matters at the end of the day. So I cannot emphasize how important it is to get your business plan right and continuously revisit it. When I used to run my companies, or even when I run divisions, I do quarterly revisits to different components of my business plan to make sure that we're on track. What needs to be changed, we change. What needs to be rectified, we rectify. What needs to be revised, we revise. Because policies change, climate changes. So that is the first thing that we need to understand. That when you sit down and come up with a plan, put it down on paper, because it doesn't make sense on paper. You're definitely not going to succeed. You will fall flat on your face, and that comes from experience.
So, Praveen, your suggestion is at least revisit your business plan quarterly,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
I mean, that's what, to always revisit to look into areas.
And I'll tell you why. Because from your business plan and understanding of financial forecast and your marketing campaigns, that's how you come up with KPIs for all your various divisions as well, right? When you understand that there's been a change in trend, then therefore there must be a change in your input and your operations and all that. All this comes down back to your KPIs as well. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with this term called balance scorecard. It is a tool that you pick up during your masters. If you don't know it, Google it, understand it, and it's a fantastic matrix to follow as well beyond just your business planning. There are many versions to balance scorecarding, but it's a very nice scorecard that keeps you as a business owner on track.
All right. Thanks, Praveen. And let's talk about failures. We talk about failures being best teachers, right? So, I mean, Praveen, from your experience, what are your thoughts?
I totally agree, lah. My first failure came when in secondary school. My teachers told me I was dumb, because during my time, right, it's either you fit in the mold or you're stupid. There wasn't ADHD, all the various Ds, all the dyslexia, and all that. So I'm highly dyslexic. I never knew this until I went for aptitude test, and I found out that my IQ is above 110. I think 115, and I'm highly dyslexic. That's why I could never go through traditional school. But that failure, it killed me initially because it affected my self-confidence and all that. But like I said, when I'm a N-level guy who lives in Yishun, who was part of a team that's part of a family that redefined the way people travel. How many people can say that? I'm not bragging. I'm stating a fact. You can think about $400. Those days it's just for the flight from Singapore Bangkok. Today $400. You can think about going there, spending the money there, and then coming back, still having change to buy souvenirs for your friends. Because of us accepting failures as well. One thing I've learned from my previous bosses, I had the amazing opportunity to also be under the tutorage of Richard Benson for a very short period of time. He was, as like me, a dyslexic as well. And the only way he learned was failure. He has 1,000 companies. Out of the 1,000 companies, only 10 are making money. The other 990 are tests. Right? Another word for failure, it's a matter of time before it fails, and then you close it. Then you start another company. But that's it, right? But not all of us are billionaires like Richard Branson. So I think failures are very important. When you build your business, when you come up with your operations strategy, when you come up with your marketing strategy, any strategy you come up with, people talk about risk, right? Failures are also part of risk. You must factor in when you hire someone to do a certain role. You must give the reason I think I've achieved so much. I'm very proud of my achievements. It's because my bosses gave me the environment to fail. That was part of the risk element of my role as well. So try it. We can afford to fail 2 times, but third time you better make it, Priveen. If not, we'll have to fire you. That kind of thing. But my point is this: failure is very important for growth. So failure is a very negative word, but we need an environment where we can really test things also. Be it failure or not, then we can learn from it, and that's how R&D is, right? You find out what doesn't work, you tweak it, and then you take it to the next level. So I think failures must be a baseline in certain aspect of a business.
Right. Thanks, Praveen. And we have a question from Dana. She's like, what success mean to you?
Dana, is your question to as a business owner or as Priveen? Because two very different questions. Because we're having a forum here, success. I hope at the end of this, you will be able to come up with a successful plan to start your own brand, to understand it a bit more. I always like to empower Singaporeans I think we need to develop the guts to start things. And I'm available, I'm very accessible actually. A lot of people think I'm not very accessible, but I'm extremely accessible. Feel free to reach out to me in anything to help you become successful. But for me personally, I define success through empowerment. A lot of things that I do, in fact, I'm only driven by empowerment. If through this, like today's talk, right? I don't need to do this. It is not to blow my own trumpet. It's not to say I'm great, I've done this, I've done that. No, it is to share my journey. And if I can empower just one person to say that, maybe I have looked at my business plan wrong, or maybe I should tweak this in my sales strategy, or whatever reason, or in my hiring, I should relook at how I do my hiring matrix. Then that has empowered you to make a better decision, and I'm totally cool with it. I do a lot of social work, and that continues to be my core. And because of empowerment, that continues to be the center of a lot of things that I do. Yeah, so empowerment. Yeah.
Right, Dana, if that answers your question, just give us a thumbs up. And thanks for the question. Now, we have one more question before we move on from Vishalani. Now, what key activities would you recommend entrepreneurs to invest their time in? I think I believe Vishalani is talking about the young aspiring entrepreneurs. So any specific activities that you would suggest?
Never turn down an opportunity to have coffee, because you never know what you're going to learn or who you're going to meet. And I've always met people by chance. So I think networking is very, very important. And it's very important to meet people out of your comfort zone. As long as you're not driven by ego, I think it is very important to meet people out of your comfort zone so that you can learn other aspects of it as well.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Praveen. And Visha, if this answers the question, just give us a thumbs up, and thanks for the question again. And Praveen, we'll move on. Right now, I'm just going to go on a fast, rapid, question round for you. Just a couple of questions. Right. So, ready, Praveen?
Let's go ahead.
Now, what do you want to be remembered for?
My smile, I think. Everyone says I go get smile. No, I think it's my accessibility. That's what I want to be known for.
All right. And the legacy you want to leave behind?
Empowerment.
Right. And what do you see, Praveen, in the next 5 years?
I don't think that far, bro. I wake up, I thank God for the day. I see how I can empower whatever I need to do for that day, and then I move on. Because gone are the days where we think 5 years ahead. Look at India today. All those who have perished never thought that, in a week that they would have lost their lives. So I really don't think that far ahead.
Okay. All right. And your biggest disappointment and regret?
I don't have any, If I could, I would have wanted to be a doctor. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I do a lot of social work. I travel the world. I do a lot of social work. I think medicine is one talent that you don't need anything. You just need a stethoscope and go to a village and really make a difference. So if I could rewrite everything, it would have been an opportunity to explore medicine, so that I can really do some work. Like just flight, spend holiday, do some seva or some social work. Yeah, but I've got no regrets, none at all.
Right.
Every failure has been a teacher.
Yeah, agree. I think sometimes it's harder to find or think about any disappointments and regrets compared to the achievements. So, yeah. And what's your greatest achievement? It could be business related, it could be personal, anything. Your greatest achievement that you always think that.
My mom is very proud of me. My wife is very proud of me. The people around me are very proud of me. Not because of my achievements, but because of the environment I've built. So that's something I'm very proud of. I think first and foremost, the journey that my mom has been on, to be able to make her smile and chill out and enjoy life, is something I'm very proud of. And yeah.
Right. Thanks, Praveen. And any word of advice for entrepreneurs and our viewers who are currently engaged in our chat?
Humility, shitloads of hard work, and there's a difference between hearing and listening. I think we don't listen enough. We hear, we are involved in a lot of conversations, and there's a lot of noise on social media, on the internet. But we really need to learn to hear so that we can learn.
Right. Thank you so much, Praveen. I still feel that it was just like the start of our live chat, and it's like 1 hour plus just gone like this. As much as I was trying to keep track of time, it just goes on and on. And I thank you a lot, Praveen, to come up today to share all your experiences, to answer the questions of our viewers. I really appreciate that, and thank you so much, Praveen.
Thanks for having me, Shakti. I really appreciate it, and thank all the viewers for spending Thursday evening with us.
All right, definitely we'll meet up for another coffee session very soon, Praveen.
Sure.
All right. Okay, cheers. Okay. Thanks, Praveen.
Bye.
Right, so it was an awesome session with Praveen, and we had a lot of questions coming in, and we talked about branding, what branding was, and we actually spoke specifically about entrepreneurship, about business owners. I think it was a real good session, and thank you for all our viewers out there who were continuously engaging our guests with your question. And I hope that these questions have been answered by Praveen, and I believe it was because of the replies that you gave. So once again, thank you so much. And as I said, time just runs every Thursday, the moment we start our live chat. And, I hope that, we can do it better for you guys as we move on. Now, with that, it's time to say goodbye. And for those of you, just a kind reminder, for those of you who have been following us on Bettery Hub channel, remember to subscribe us on our YouTube channel. And of course, if audio is the thing for you, visit us on Bettery Hub podcast on our Spotify. And of course, do like our page, and all our live chats will be up on Spotify every Saturday. So this live chat will be up on Spotify latest by Saturday. So with that, thank you so much. And I think what's more important is to be always doing better, and to always look yourself and aspire to, to bring yourself and grow to the next level that you really want. So with that, thank you so much to every one of you, and we'll meet up next Thursday. See ya.